Embarrassing.
Welcome into the Dad Verb Podcast. The intro is ruined by Andrew slipping in there with a little bit of talk right there. I'm just kidding. Welcome to the Dad Verb Podcast, where we chat about parenting from the lens of a dad. My name is Andrew, and we are joined by a few guys today. As usual, we've got Ben Brown, Andrew Saunders, but today we actually have a special guest, Chris Tran. He's one of our mods in our Discord community. He's been a longtime member of the kind of Dad Verb community. You are a course member. What we've been watching the channel for a while, right?
Oh yeah, yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right,
since my wife was pregnant, like 14, 16 weeks with my first son.
No, yeah, it's been.
Yeah. I was like, I'm like building this registry. I'm like, oh man, there has to be some nerd on YouTube who reviews stuff for babies, and I just landed on your YouTube video. I was like, man, this is good. And like literally, I built my registry based on your videos. Thank you.
Oh, that's good. Well,
yeah. So
you didn't sell the channel well, but it's fine. I'm playing. No, that's awesome. Well, it's cool. So just real quick, just give us a quick rundown. Where are you from? How many kids you got? How old are they? How long you been a dad? Give us a quick rundown about you.
Yeah, sure. So I'm in Memphis, Tennessee. My son is 16 months today.
Nice.
And today, yeah. Oh, a couple days ago, yeah.
Okay, so it's kind of 16-month birthday.
It's the type of deal where you kind of like lose track of time.
Yeah. Oh, I get it. That's cool.
16 months.
16 months. So you're in the throes of toddlerhood right now.
Yes. Yeah.
We're right there with you.
Opinions. So that's fun.
I get it. No, it's
cool.
And
my wife's actually expecting, or we're expecting another one.
How far along?
There you go.
She's 16 weeks.
Congratulations.
Oh, wow.
This is amazing to hear.
Awesome.
I love it.
Thank you.
Dude, this is
I
awesome.
hope you've told the family, because this is going live on YouTube. It's
Yeah.
out there now.
Yeah.
Dude,
so the family is on Facebook. It's on Instagram. We're good.
You guys know gender already or no?
No, not yet. We're doing it a secret.
Oh, for real?
Well, no,
so you guys have...
We're doing a gender review next week. Oh, sorry, this weekend.
Okay.
Yeah.
You'll find out. Okay.
We'll find out.
You guys got names?
Who did you trust with the gender? That's the real question. Who's got the envelope and has to make sure they get the colors right?
That's true. So my wife's aunt. So she baked the cake for our son's gender review. So we're like, hey, can you do it again? So she has the secret. She has the envelope.
Nice. Okay, so you say aunt instead of aunt. Andrew, do you say aunt or aunt?
My aunt. A-N-T, aunt. Yeah.
Ben, what do you say, aunt or aunt?
Aunt.
I grew up saying aunt. I think it's an East Coast thing, possibly. Then again, Ben, you did grow up in the East, so
I'm guessing it's vernacularly correct. Aunt.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a U in there, right? I grew up
for a long time saying aunt, but the longer I've been around, my wife's entire family is from Long Island, and we've been together since we were 19. So the longer I've been around then, the more it has morphed into my aunts and uncles versus my aunts and uncles.
There you go. Well, so that's the breakdown of how we all say aunt versus aunt.
Welcome to the podcast.
Do you want to do the soda versus pop thing next? Like,
that'd be a fun game. Just kind of like the regional dialect quiz. Well, on this podcast, we're going to be getting to a few things other than our the way we say words. We're gonna catch up with Chris a little bit here. We're going to be chatting about dads versus moms, kind of the expectations, dads being praised for not that much, I guess, and moms having to shoulder a lot. Well, I mean, we're going to open up that discussion. We've chatted about it a little bit in the past. We're going to get some new thoughts here. And then we're going to chat about being a minority dad. Chris, if you're watching on YouTube, looks not white. And it's amazing because he's like me. We got some Asian ancestry going on here.
We're almost like brothers.
There you go. So just chat about my minority dad and how we kind of go about it. Because Chris, it's similar to me, right? Well, you're Vietnamese, I'm Chinese, and your wife is white, right? So I think there's some cultural things that you kind of want to introduce your kids, and maybe it might be different from how your wife grew up. So that'll be a fun topic to dive into. We'll get into some Discord comments, and then round it out with 5-star review. So to start, we got to do our sick check. How's everyone feeling? right now? Everyone healthy? Everyone sick? What's going on?
I'm about like 90% now. I got sick 2 weeks ago. And
So there's always someone. All right, so
always,
streak is still
Clean.
at 0 weeks. How are you doing?
I'm clean. Good. No sick kids. No sick adults. No sick dogs.
Good. Ben, how you doing?
Same thing. We are at 100% health at our house. And I say that now. We've got 3 more weeks, I think, till my daughter starts daycare. So
get ready.
Good. I may miss a couple podcasts here and there because I know it's just going to end up being a disaster.
Dude, that's what's going to happen to us. Oh, no, we are actually healthy as well. We've had a lingering cough. I've had a lingering cough. Some of the kids from whatever we had a couple weeks ago, but we're actually good at the moment.
Way to ruin it, Chris. We were gonna have week 1, and you just threw it out the window.
Main guys are good. Chris screwed us. No, we're good. But hopefully, but here's the thing though.
We logging off,
and he quits the podcast.
Infected, man. No, we've got birthdays. At least on my end, we've got 2 birthdays coming up. We've got an anniversary trip coming up. So it's like it's one of those things where leading up to like big fun events that you want to like enjoy. Yeah. It's like you try everything you can to like live in a bubble and just like not get sick. But I know our track record, and it's gonna get bad at leading.
There's always this like looming threat of sickness whenever there's anything important coming up. You're just like, I just sit there and go, don't get sick, don't get sick, don't get sick, don't get sick.
And it just keep talking about it. And I'm just going, I got to schedule extra recordings. Like we're not going to make it through October.
Seriously.
I feel bad because I would sanitize everything he touches now, because I'm like, okay, you cannot get sick before daycare. I cannot take any more days off.
I mean, seriously, it's just bad. So actually my nephew, he's just started pre-K, and day one came back hacking away, just cough. He was healthy otherwise leading up to it, so it's like, yo, what the heck. But we're good. Let's talk about wins for the week. Anything any cool dad parenting moments this week that's happened to each of you guys? Real quick, I'll just kick it off. This week, Henry, actually both my boys, they started their soccer season, and Henry is now part of it's like a club team. It's like a lot more serious. We paid like freaking $300 for like his jerseys and his and it's like very expensive every month, but it's like the sport that like he's gonna get into, that he wants. So we've invested in that and he's enjoying it. But he had his first game and they did fantastic. It was really cool to like see your kid, I don't know, like suited up in like legit gear, like playing against good talent. It's like weird to see very young talented kids, but I don't know, just seeing your kid, your son in the mix, it's a fun thing. And then same with Colin, he's not at the club level, but I don't know, it's just a really fun, really cool thing as a dad to just see your children enjoying something that they want to be a part of, that you also, it's a passion that you like as well. So I don't know, it was just a cool moment to just see my kids suited up playing soccer. Colin got a goal with his belly. It was kind of accidental. It like ricocheted.
Still counts.
But he got in and it counts. But it was just so sad, dude, because like leading up to it, like he was excited to play soccer and get suited up. But as we were leaving the car to walk to the field, he goes like, "Dad, is it okay if I don't score goals today?" I said, "Yeah, of course. Like, that's totally fine, bud. I just want you to have fun. Just try to kick the ball. That's all you have to do, man." And then after I said, all you have to do is just try to kick the ball, he's like, "I don't know if I could do that." I was like, "Oh, but," like he got really like scared and nervous. I feel like less about playing the game, more just like playing in front of me and Katie, and because they're throughout the game, he was constantly like, look at us and just kind of like, "Am I doing okay?" We're like, "Look, you're doing great. It was fun." But yeah, it was really cute. It was really fun to see the boys enjoying soccer. Ben, what's a good win for you this week, man?
Yeah, I think the big thing that we're realizing, now that we have 2 and our daughter's 7 months old today, actually, which has flown by, is one of the big things that you always talk about when you have, I think, 2 kids, right? Is from the first to the second, I think I was always worried that, you're going to love your first kid differently, or it's going to change your relationship, or, all these other things. Like, I'm not going to have enough time for them. How are we going to make this work? And one of the things that I never realized and didn't really consider was, as she gets older, like the relationship that they're developing. Because, I walk in a room and she's happy to see me and she's excited and she's kicking her legs. But if her brother walks in the room, she literally like screeches with joy, like big gummy smiles, just so excited to see him. She's in a little walker now, so she tries to follow him around the house and like go wherever he goes. And he is like so in love with her and she's so in love with him. And it's so awesome to like watch this bond developing between the two kids. And so it's not, anything I'm doing directly, but just to be able to like step back and appreciate that and say, it's not even about how the relationship changes between my wife and I and our kids. It's like really watching them build their own ecosystem and their own relationship together. That's like such a special thing to be able to sit there and appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. Dang, man. Andrew, what about you, man?
My win for the week is I made it back from our remote on-site location today. We arrived 2 hours ago, and I got the dogs, and everybody's alive, and I'm here for this. So I'm going with a win.
Awesome.
That was 16-hour road trip, and yeah.
I like it. Chris, any cool things happen with you, man?
Yeah, so we just got back from a beach trip to Gulf Shores.
Nice.
It was
Congrats,
a blast. Like, it was, we're at this resort, and it was perfect timing because people were leaving as we were going in.
Wait, with your toddler or without?
After Labor Day. Oh, excuse me.
With your
my
toddler?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
not a real vacation.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It's like, but luckily, my in-laws came with us, so they did some babysitting. So we got some beach times, me and the miss.
Yeah,
But
take them with you. Take
it
them
was-
with
it
you
was
and
fun,
let other
though.
people take care of your kids.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
It's fun
you're parenting
watching
in a
him.
different location.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I definitely owe them a bunch of things. But,
I mean, there is an ask component to the take them and let them parent your kid. Like, somebody else abandons their kids with you, and you're like, wait, it's my vacation too. What are you doing? Like,
hey man,
you could have at least said, "Can you watch my kid?"
In my
I mean,
experience,
they
people volunteer.
so yes, they've offered.
Yeah.
I'm like, sure.
In my experience, they don't.
My brother-in-law and sister-in-law have abandoned their kids with us. Like, they got on paddle boards and left. And their two boys left. We were on a lake in Montana. The boys came running up like, "Can we get in the hot tub?" And we looked down, and mom and dad are halfway across the lake on these paddle boards, like, and we're out. No questions. No. So, little courtesy, just a little.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Not like we were going to say no. Just
Hey man, you're not my responsibility. Go figure it out.
yeah.
There's a
Like,
lot of
man,
people
I
like
didn't
that.
Tie
leave you
you
to
to
talk
the
to your
dock in
parents.
an inner tube. Your parents will be upset when they get back. Yeah.
Man, my brother-in-law, my sister. Man, I wish they were here to chat about it. I got to get my brother-in-law on a podcast one day, just for him to share his experience recently, because he had it was ill-advised, but they had like a wedding to go to in Hawaii, but before that they had always planned a trip to Carlsbad, California. So they're like, you know what? They're all around the same time. Let's just merge it all together and make it all work. So they went to Carlsbad, and then right after that they went to Hawaii. And apparently from the very beginning to end, like, it was a complete nightmare because the sleep schedule is already thrown off. Sleep environment's kind of different. You try your best to like keep it the same. It's all different. Their kid is hard to begin with. And then you go to Hawaii, that like he was jet lagged and he was horrible. And they were also like not just in the wedding, but like they had to like do stuff for the wedding. They had to like cook and like decorate.
Oh man,
this kid running around, and they were staying at this nice giant house, but there was a pool, and the pool was like ungated, guarded, none of that. And the kid has a knack. His name's Patrick. Patrick's got a knack for opening doors and just walking out. Even like he knows how to navigate locks. Like, he's fine. And just going toward a pool is just incredibly dangerous. So it's like it was just high stress the whole time. I'll try to get my brother-in-law here to just chat about it. And I asked him, hey, what was your favorite part of the trip? He goes, when Patrick was sleeping. I said, oh no.
Oh no.
But I've been there though. Like I know how that feels when I think the hardest part, honestly, is like you're in Hawaii, right? It's a beautiful time for a wedding, beautiful area. But the hardest part is the illusion that you can have a nice, relaxing time on the beach. It's all an illusion. It's a big tease because you got this kid screaming and you have to stay on the grind on defense and do like all the things of being a parent, being a dad. Even when you divide and conquer, it's tough,
Let's be fair. Our favorite time of the day for all of us is when the kids are asleep.
Bro, yes.
And either get 30 seconds with the wife or she's going to bed too. And you can be like, bro, okay, I get a break.
We talk about
5 minutes.
It's like we feel so guilty about it too, because it's like it's so true though. Like the 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock grind is so tough. That's the hardest part of the day. They're so angry.
It's tough.
But then once they're asleep, it's like, oh, thank goodness. But then all we can do is like talk about the freaking kids and look at their pictures. Look at all these videos I got to see on it today. It's like
all the pictures we're taking.
I gotta post all these on YouTube or Facebook, upload them to the Dropbox so I never lose them because I need 300 photos of my kid with ranch on their hands.
Can't stop looking at my freaking kids on my phone. And I'm like, gosh. Anyway, that's a quick rundown of our wins for the week. So let's dive into our first kind of topic here. Now, this is something that Ben and we chatted about it a while back. We were trying to recount when we did it before this podcast started. It was like early on. It was like our 4th episode or something like that. But it's about dads getting praised for the bare minimum versus the expectations that are set upon moms. And I think the example that Ben gave was when he was wearing his baby at like Costco and he got a bunch of stares and compliments even. And that's just that's just not something that ever happens to mom. That's just the expectation. Whereas for dad, it's like, wow, the exception. You're doing so great. But it's like, it's not. Roles are changing. Times are changing. That's just not how it should be. I feel like I've been talking a lot. So I'll open the floor up to you guys. Like, what are your thoughts on this, on the expectations of moms versus dads and where our roles lie today? I'll kick it off to Ben to get started, and then we can loop in Andrew and Chris.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is something that, we talked about on the show before, and I think I have a lot of conversations with my wife. So I try to like follow some accounts and get some information that, is outside of my understanding. So I'll follow like mom accounts and like other accounts that maybe give some insight as to like what moms go through or feel like it's sort of like a more general sense. But one of the things I noticed pretty early on, like with our son and even with our daughter, is if I'm ever out with one kid or if I'm out with both kids, right, and I'm by myself, there is almost no shortage of people who are going to come up to me and say, man, like, can't believe you're out with both your kids. Like, can't believe, or if I wear my daughter all over the place, right? Because it's just easier to throw her in a carrier and carry her around rather than like trying to strap her into a stroller and wheel that thing through a store. And so many people, usually, like older women, will stop you and say, like, my husband would never carry the baby. My husband never even changed a diaper. And all I'm doing literally is just wearing my daughter around just so she's comfortable. I'm comfortable. She's having fun. She can see the world. And I feel like, dads don't really have to try that hard to get the praise. And so it's like the bar feels like it's so low for dads, right? Like if you change diapers and you feed the baby, and like if your baby is fussy and you're the one that goes to comfort them, like everybody looks at like, wow, what an amazing father. And I think it's hard to feel that and see it. And like if the praise feels nice, like, oh yeah, I'm actually doing a really good job, like compliment me. But it's also that, like, if my wife does the same thing, feeds the baby, changes the diaper, wears her around, calms her when she's fussy, not a single person looks at that and says, "Hey, mom, you're doing a great job. It's really amazing that you're doing these things." And so, when we think through this, it's like there's such a difference in the expectation for moms versus dads for fulfilling like basic needs of their children.
That point that you made, I will say, and I said I wasn't really going to talk and leave it to you guys, but here I am. I'm sorry.
I mean, it's your show.
Yeah.
So that point that you made, though, is in a way what I like exploited to grow Dad Verb. Because early on, early on, I was kind of, I guess, one of the earlier guys to start creating content for dads. Now it's a little bit more commonplace, but I was like, I just knew that I was there, that wasn't happening. I was like, oh, all I have to do is create like baby content and stuff like that because no guy is doing it, and just like watch all the freaking praise just wash in because no one's doing this. If a mom does it, so no one cares. If I do it, pretty sure I'll get views. It's exactly what happened because I saw a void, right? And it was just like so interesting because in a way I was just like, this is great, I'm exploiting a void here, but at the same time I'm like, what? Like, why is no one doing this? Like we are just as involved. I mean, a majority of guys are just as involved. There's some deadbeats out there. It's just sad, and my hope is for Dad Verb to really shift the mindset there. But it wasn't. I don't know. I was just like, why is there not more voices in this? And maybe it's just because even though gender roles are changing a little bit, we still, all of us work. Right. We're still not the primary caretaker. So I get that. But I really do think that was a big contributor to the growth of Dad Verb early on. Then it shifted and, the reason for more people tuning in was a little changed a bit, but, it was just funny that you said that. Anyway, I'll kick it off to you two guys. What are you guys' thoughts on the topic?
Yeah. For me, I feel like, doing the simple task you get rewarded for. I mean, for example, when I were at Gulf Shores, we're at a museum, and I told my wife, hey, I'll take our kid. We'll walk around. You just do your thing. It's fine. And I go around, taking pictures with him, having fun with him, and all these older ladies. Wow, you're so cute with your son, doing all these things with your son. I was like, I mean, thank you, but I thought this is a normal thing, right? Me taking pictures of my son on random little fixtures and stuff, But it really got me thinking, because it seems like mothers, there's a lot of pressure on them just to be a parent. Like, if, for example, if I cook dinner, congrats. If the mother cooks dinner, are you sure it's good food? Are you sure it's cooked properly? Is it sure you have enough nutritions? It's a weird dynamic, right? Like me changing diapers, good job. If mothers change diapers, did you put the diaper cream on? It's weird. It feels like mothers
a lot more questioning.
Have a higher expectations than men or fathers.
For the bar for us is just to do it. For the bar for moms is how well they've been doing it. So I completely get. And it's true. It's true. I mean, it's hard. Like, I just wish that wasn't a thing, but it is, because in a way I feel guilty, I feel like, it's a hard, thing, especially, I think about my wife. I'm sorry. You want to say something?
Well, no,
Go ahead.
I think what we're all dancing around is there is a social norm that has been set up in American culture, for lack of a better term, that says mom will take care of the kids. If dad does it, that's a break for mom. It's not mom and dad will take care of the kids, right? And maybe it's a holdover from the 20s, maybe it's a holdover from whenever, but we haven't eroded that idea out of the culture yet. And I mean, and it's funny because my wife is the youngest of her cousins and the last to have a child, but we went to visit her aunt, and our daughter needed a diaper change. We only had one at the time. I grabbed her, and her aunt has this whole like room that's set up basically for all of her grandchildren to go get diaper changes, have like there's a crib in there, there's a little day bed, right? It's the take your kid in there if they need to calm down. And I just scooped her up. I went in there, I changed the diaper, and it was like this amazing thing because none of her sons-in-law do that. Like they don't change diapers.
Wow.
You know what?
It's commonplace even today for adult males to have never changed a diaper, even if they have 3, 4, 5 kids. And so I don't think it's as uncommon I think it is uncommon for a dad to be carrying his kid through Costco and having a time, or a dad be running his kid around a museum. I mean, I don't think it's as common as we all want to accept it. I think there's a difference in we're all engaged fathers. We're not just providing the income and the safe place, right? Is that?
I want to ask a question. That could potentially be a little bit dicey here, but it's it's still, it's so do you think
Can't be any worse than the next topic? Go for it.
Do you think parents of today, do you think they have it easier because partners are statistically much more involved than generations past? Or do you think they actually have it harder because on top of the parenting, just the rigors of parenting, they also have to deal with the additional load that comes from social media, the expectations that are levied upon them, the comparison that's prevalent through TikTok and Instagram and all that. Do you think it's harder because of that, or do you think it's easier because of our just technically our increased involvement for our generation? What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I really think the tasks have gotten easier, right? Disposable diapers versus having to do cloth diapers. The baby Brezza mixes your formula for you. You don't have to measure it out properly and shake the bottle, right? We have bottle warmers. We have dishwashers. Like, the tasks are simpler. Like, my mother is amazed at Arduino. She's like, this thing makes my life so easy as a grandma, right? Like, because she was used to a carrier or a car seat, and so the individual things I think we've made simpler. However, the peer expectations are still the same in their peer group, and they're getting a lot of judgment from social media that's false, for lack of a better term, right? And it's not helpful that now your mother-in-law can reach out at any moment, looking at any photo you post of any kid, and go, well, why isn't she wearing the blah? Or what? Why are you using that bottle? I bought you the other bottle, right? Like, the interactions are getting more complicated because you're able to instantly connect.
Yeah. And I think moms open themselves up to, and this is the issue, right? We talk about the impact of social media on kids' mental health, on parents' mental health, on all of these things. So I think what you said, Andrew, is a great point. The task of raising a child is made simpler by modern technology. We have breathing monitors, we have all these high-tech AI-powered smart monitors, we have bottle warmers, we have all this technology that helps us do the physical tasks of raising a child. And yet, with the amount of information that's out there, there is this sort of undertone, especially for moms, that you should be constantly questioning how you can be a better mom. Because there's some mom out there that's more Montessori than you, that feeds their kids better food, that's more beige than you, that just has it more together than you do.
Better on social media than you do.
Oh my God.
They just have it together more than you do. And that's a challenge, because if that's what's constantly coming up in your feed, and you're juxtaposing that with, my house is kind of messy, and there's dishes in the sink, and I have colorful plastic toys, you can judge yourself and say, am I ruining my kids by not doing it this way? And meanwhile, those people are not experts. They have just crafted an image to reflect what they want the world to see. And that more than likely is not the reality of what their life looks like.
I'm gonna let you. I'm gonna let you go, Chris. Hearing all this, I legit feel, and maybe I'm biased here, but I feel like that right there, that the societal pressure through social media, despite increased involvement from men all around, I really do think that women of today, my wife, your wives, have it harder as a mom than what my mom had to deal with, what other generations past had to deal with, because of that access to the world. Honestly, it's so difficult, that comparison, that mental health toll. It makes it so much harder, despite all of the technology, all the tools to theoretically make our lives easier, with Britzas and AI monitors and everything to keep your mind at ease. It's never in history has it been more stressful from a mental health perspective, because of just of what we consume on a daily basis through our phones. It's so difficult. It really does make our lives difficult. So, all right, Chris, go ahead, man.
Oh yeah, no worries. No, it's just, I mean, I'm just echoing all you guys saying. It seems like the goalpost for a perfect mom, it keeps getting pushed back, right? I mean, task is easier. Moms get to do it perfectly. Like, oh wait, that's not perfect enough. Let's move it back more. So, for example, on Instagram, I follow a lot of moms who make their kids meals. And it's getting so elaborate, like with these bento boxes, with these fancy sushis.
I've seen it.
Noodles, and
they use like these little cutouts and stuff to make it all perfect.
Spend
like
35 minutes making your kid a bento box.
It's so not realistic.
Yeah,
they don't.
Still not
They
don't show any of these kids eating the little smiley face dinosaur egg.
They show how good of a parent you are on social, but your kid ain't eating that. That's so true.
And like my poor wife, she's like, I mean, we want to feed our son the best we could provide, right? But like hitting that mark every single day for 3-4 meals a day, it's impossible, right?
Yeah.
But it feels like, that's the new goal, right? You want to be a perfect mom, you better make dinosaur-shaped fruit. I mean,
I did. I got dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets from Wendy's and fed them to my kid on the way home. All right,
you guys don't make your pancakes in the shape of a Pikachu every single time with blueberry eyes. You guys don't do that.
I mean, I do it in Charizard.
Wow.
Wow.
I mean, we might have to get you into Pokemon therapy. little Pokemon intervention.
I don't have a problem. You say I don't have problems.
Shuffle.
Literally, I'm always shuffling. Yo, there's have we made it through a single episode of this podcast without me casually dropping one reference to Pokemon? I don't think so.
No.
I don't know. I don't think so.
There's always been one. Well, that was actually that's a really good conversation. I feel like there's some snippets that we might want to pull out of there and share on social, because that's a good combo. Hopefully it doesn't get us canceled.
Hopefully it does get us canceled. That's fine. Cancel me for saying that women are putting too much stress on other mothers for being good mothers. Cancel me for that.
I mean,
I volunteer as tribute.
I'll die on that hill.
Yeah, I'll die on that sword.
Before we get into the next podcast, our next episode, topic. Our next topic. I like
there we go.
Pokemon's
wrong words. Before we roll into our next topic here, we got to thank our sponsor, which is nobody. But I do want to say one sponsor I'd love to have is Melon, right? The hats that I think, Ben, you're wearing a Melon hat right now, right? Bro, there's a problem though. I thought these things were supposed to be resistant to sweat stains. Well,
it depends on the color. Number one. Number
look
two,
at this.
Seriously, look up their cleaning process. It usually works. 3, if you use their cleaning process and it doesn't work, write them. They'll send you a new hat.
Bro, this is not
you can't
even
just
from
throw it in
rigorous.
the washing machine.
No,
that's how you ruin hats.
I wish.
I think there's a process. Yeah, that's I have
I'm
done
speaking
that.
to this as the resident bald guy that ruins every hat that I own. Like they're fairly easy to clean. So once you clean it, if it doesn't work, like just send them a message, be like, "Hey, this is supposed to be sweat resistant," and they're really good about it.
Yeah, well, until they start paying us as a sponsor, for now, just everyone know that Melon is not immune to sweat stains like I thought.
Just knock
You're
it
riddled
until
with
they pay
problems.
us.
You are getting very hostile because they haven't reached out to you to sponsor your podcast. Like
Our podcast. No, this is great.
Okay.
Sweat was from literally sitting at my son's soccer games all day. So I didn't do anything rigorous.
Question,
I
Andrew,
swear
do you shower? Do you wash your hair?
only on Tuesdays. So,
okay. That's what it
Just
is.
checking.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's dive into the next topic here. Being a minority dad. We've talked about, sharing our cultures, passing things that we're passionate about, things that we grew up with, things that, are familiar to our family down to our kids. And Ben and I think we've opened it up a little bit. But Chris, I wanted to, get your thoughts here. And even though Andrew is not a person of color, I think there are some still cultural implications that we can talk about here. That being in Utah is, being not LDS or Mormon in Utah, you do feel like you're definitely a minority. So
It has its own struggles for sure.
It definitely does. And me having been a guy who graduated from Utah College called BYU and not being Mormon, I definitely understand being a minority in a minority, like I was a minority within a minority. So it was, yeah. But Chris, you're Vietnamese, your wife is white. So, I mean, have you kind of navigated any sort of cultural differences with your little, whether I don't know whether that was kind of regarding feeding or traditions or anything like that? I mean, I'll open the floor up to you, man. How has it been being a Vietnamese dad?
It's been good, but also a lot of challenges, right? The good is he's going to be exposed with two different cultures, which is great. He's going to be that kid who eats like all the fancy Asian foods. He will probably be bilingual. So it's one of those things that I'm excited about for his future, but also I'm also a little hesitant because I don't want him to feel left out a lot of this, right? Like I don't want him to feel like, oh, I'm not white enough, or oh, I'm not Asian enough. So I'm just hoping that one day that we get to a point where that doesn't be a challenge for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I'm sure.
Oh no, I was going to say
that.
the food thing. It's I think I chatted about this a while back.
You did. Yep.
Yeah, being that one kid in elementary school, and I would have just a very different lunch than some other kids. And I remember being made fun of for that. And I was just like, damn, man, I hate this. It was that was annoying. I would hope that it's less nowadays, but maybe that's just kind of maybe where you dependent on where you live and what the breakdown is of who's in the area. But that was that's something that I like worry about. Like I want to send my kids to school with things aren't going to get them made fun of or whatever, but I do want them to have a diverse palate. That maybe that won't come from school lunches, but it is still on me to expose the kids to.
I mean, I definitely understand. Have you guys watched the show Fresh Off Boat?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm familiar with that. I watched it. Yeah.
Oh, it's the one episode where the kid, his family's Chinese, and his mom sent him noodles to school. And when he went to the lunchroom, he opened his lunchbox, and everybody was like, "Ew, gross! What are you eating? Get out of here!" And then poor kid has to sit outside, eat his lunch with the janitor because his food smells so bad.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm going to send my kids smelly foods.
It makes you think. But I mean, it makes you think about like how your kid's going to be perceived because of their culture, which is like, I feel like that's really challenging, especially if you don't have, if there's not a big, Vietnamese community or there's not a lot of exposure. Like if the parents are not exposing their kids to other cultures, it becomes this thing of like, it's different than me. And so, especially in like middle school is ruthless. Any little thing, any little weakness that you have, kids are going to exploit it because generally they feel terrible about themselves. And they're so unsure that they're just like, well, if I make fun of these other people, then no one's going to make fun of me. It won't be nearly as bad. So like whether it's your food or how you look or how you dress or, how you sound or whatever, they're going to find a reason to like try and dig into you. just to make themselves feel better.
Yeah.
And, I think as a parent, it's like you want to share that culture because it's important to you, but you also don't want to like separate your kid from everyone else and give them, a platform from which to be made fun of.
Right.
So
it's a hard thing to balance.
and I don't have as much of that experience. Like, so my background, I'm like ambiguously brown, right? Like people don't know if I'm like Asian or Pacific Islander or like Hispanic. Like I'm just like sort of, people just look at me and they're like, what are you? So my background is West African. So my dad is like West African, and then my mom is like French, Irish, and I think partly Scottish. I have like a DNA breakdown somewhere. But so for me, it was like, when I was growing up, I grew up in a very rural community. There were not really any people of color. I was one of 1.5 black kids in my entire school. So there's one actual black kid, and then me is the half black kid. And so it was really interesting that I never felt like I was different than everybody. But I never felt like I was quite a part of it either. Like there was always something a little bit where I was like, I would have, when I went to college, like I had my black friends and I had my white friends, and they all intermingled. Like everybody was in, the same classes, and there was never any issues. But there's this, and people call it like code switching. There was this thing that I sort of like learned because I was never really exposed to like black culture growing up, because I grew up in a very small farming community, all white kids. I knew everything there could be about like just blue collar kind of like redneck culture, right? Like that's what I grew up in. And then I move into college, and like my junior year roommate, like grew up in, kind of in the, basically the hood, in the city that we went to school in. And so he had like a much different perspective. And so I learned a lot about the culture from him. And that's where I started to learn to like, how do I fit in with like my black friends? How does that change when like your white friends are around? And you start to see those differences of like how my black friends would speak to each other, and then how they would speak to each other when my white friends were around. And so you see this like shift. And so, like going into that, now I have 2 kids. My son has blonde hair, blue eyes, fair skin, right? But he is, for all intents and purposes, at least 25% West African. And, my daughter has like kind of blondish brown hair. She's going to have, brown eyes, relatively, kind of olive skin. But there's nothing about them that walking down the street, you would look at them and go like, oh, those kids are part African American. Like you'd never be able to single that out. And so I'm almost of like the opposite issue of like, my kids are probably not going to face any of the things that I faced growing up. Like the first time I got called the N-word, I was 6, 7. And I was like just playing in the driveway with some friends, and somebody had heard it, and somebody decided to say it just to be hurtful because they knew it was something, that they just wanted to say, and they didn't think about the consequences. And so like, I remember that very vividly, but now I think about it and I'm like, my kids are probably never going to have to hear that. They will probably hear it and have to understand that like, yes, this is part of your heritage, and that's probably not something you should, abide or stand for. But they'll never be judged in that way. So like, how do you express that to them and help them understand where they come from, knowing that they're never going to be really in a situation where that's going to be held against them?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I'm always wondering, like, a lot, like you said earlier, like a lot of people will pick on you for differences, right? How can we flip that where we're like, hey, yes, you're different, but that makes you special. You could use that as a way to like, oh wow, you're a very interesting person because you're half Vietnamese. Please,
Right. It's
please
good
tell me
to
about your
have
culture.
right. And that's something that like I don't know the answer. Like when the day comes
Yeah.
that like I don't know if if that should that day come with my kids, of like there's some cultural differences. Like how do you flip that narrative to be a strength and a source of
Exactly.
power?
Like,
I
how
don't
to
know
be
how to
so cool,
articulate.
like that kid.
Yeah, like I don't know how to articulate that
Yeah.
to a 6 or 7-year-old. Like I don't. I
Yeah,
guess we'll
right.
cross that bridge when we get there. But yeah, that's an interesting thing that I would probably have to really dwell on because should that time come,
Yeah.
I don't know.
One
I feel like I'm
I
ill
remember.
prepared for that.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
But yeah,
That's
you let me
interesting.
know.
No. Yeah,
I just
I
know. I
know.
remember I was dating my wife, and I was talking to my parents in Vietnamese, and then later on, she's like, it's very attractive when you speak a different language.
Oh. Yeah. Wait. On that note, how are you navigating language with your little? Are you speaking Vietnamese to them?
Man, I am glad you asked that. So my Vietnamese is okay, right? Yeah, I would say
Okay.
it's about a fourth grade level. But it's enough for me to like navigate. If you like plot me in Vietnam, I can like navigate myself to places, but I can't have a full on conversation, right? And so with my son, I bought a lot of these baby books, but in Vietnamese. So I'll read it to him. So like ball or a plane, truck, I just say in Vietnamese. So that's how I try to introduce Vietnamese to him. I also follow several like Instagrams profiles who share the same challenge where they're like, I don't know how to teach my kid Vietnamese here in America. One of the tips is like, do one word at a time. So every time I pick up my son, he always says up. I'll be like, Vietnamese, and Vietnamese is so I keep saying so now he learns when one gets picked up, he's like so it's one of those things, the small things.
They'll pick it up because at this stage they really are a sponge, so that's
they really are a sponge.
Cool. Yeah,
but it also kind of stresses me out a little bit because it's like I know the first several years is like the most crucial years, right, where they can learn the language, and so I'm like, are there like there's not a lot of tutors for Vietnamese or like programs for Vietnamese. Luckily, there's a YouTube channel, kind of like Miss Rachel, but for Vietnamese people. I might introduce him to that.
That's actually, I did not know that was a thing.
So you want to have that, which I think this is really interesting because so growing up, my grandmother grew up in a French Canadian family, and they only spoke French at home.
Yeah.
And when she went to school, she got made fun of because they literally could not speak English when they went to their first American school.
Wow.
And so they get picked on like relentlessly, right, for being French. And so there's a lot of families in that sort of era, like the 1930s and 40s, especially like German families, French families, who would not speak their native language at home because they said it makes us different, it makes us foreign. And so that kind of got lost over time. So like after my grandmother, nobody in my family speaks French anymore. So it sort of stopped with her. And so I think it's really interesting that you brought up, I think you said your parents are Vietnamese. And so I'm guessing they speak Vietnamese fluently.
Yes.
And so with your culture, it seems like you're carrying that forward rather than kind of shying away from it. You're saying, I want you to speak this. I want you to understand it, which I think is such an interesting and stark difference that between, 3 generations, we've gone back to this idea of how do we not totally assimilate into whatever country we're in by not speaking our language, not practicing our culture, and how do we actually bring that back to this is who we are, this is where we're from, this is what we want to exemplify. But how does that come into the sort of American culture as well? Like we see that as a source of value and not something to necessarily be ashamed of or afraid of. And that's really flipped. I mean, just in like I said, 2 or 3 generations.
It's interesting. So I think in quite a few Asian cultures, like your grandparents live with you, right? Like for a time growing up, my grandma just lived in our house, and I'm not just like some Asian culture. I'm like I think within Indian culture as well. Families group together and they stay together for quite some time, and kids are kind of raised in a household where it's not just with their parents, but with their grandparents as well. And they would speak their native tongue, right? Like my grandma, she was originally from China, and mainland China, and but my dad was raised in the Philippines, so she spoke a variety of languages. But when I was growing up, she actually taught me bits of Mandarin as well as Taiwanese. And it was just like a part of how I was growing up. Like it was it's interesting. Yeah, there was no pushback of like, no, we need to be a part of American society, so we need to like kind of shut off, where we came from so that we can assimilate properly. Like that wasn't a thing. That it was just, like,
yeah,
you have like, I guess, a code switch, right? You have who you are with your teachers and your friends, but when you come home, this is who you are, and so you have, you're kind of like forced to blend both worlds, and it's just because you're a product of your environment. And so I'm curious, Chris, how close are you to your parents in proximity? Are they close to you?
Yeah, we're all in the same city, so
okay. So okay.
Nice.
Yep.
Do they talk to your
actually,
little?
It's a blessing or a curse.
In Vietnamese, yeah. So
Right,
growing
right.
up, we had a strict rule where we could only speak Vietnamese in the house.
Oh, cool.
So that's
That's
how
cool.
I pick up the language.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
There you go. I
And
think
it's great because I mean, you kind of hit on the nails because like when I go to school, I'll sometimes be ashamed of it. Just because it's different. No one else speaks it. I was like, one of like 3 Asian kids in my school. So I'm like, try not to be too different. But as I got older, I realized the benefit of like knowing my language and see how special it is.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to introduce that to my son.
for sure.
Hopefully he'll pick it up. Right.
So
So
Andrew,
what's interesting about the
I was actually going to flip it over
what's
to you.
What's interesting about the...
You go ahead.
Okay. Well, I was going to say, the conversation about language is interesting because all the science says the third generation will not speak the native tongue
I believe
of their ancestors. So
I believe it.
for people who immigrate to the United States and Canada, which is where most of these studies have been done, by the third generation, they've lost whatever the native tongue is, be it German, English, French, Vietnamese, Chinese, Mandarin, right? So it's a passive assimilation piece.
Yeah,
would be my guess, because I'm guessing if you're an European-born person, you move to Hong Kong, by the third generation, your kids speak Mandarin and they don't have English anymore.
Yeah.
They don't have French, or right. And it's interesting that, because I'm going with the opposite problem. How do I get my kids the language skills to be able to be multilingual as an adult in first, second, they're 1, 2, 3, 4 years old, because they have to develop those skills early. And so I have to sit them into some kind of bilingual school just to start that process. Otherwise, they're my age and they speak French well enough to find the bathroom and order crepes, and Japanese well enough to find the bathroom and order ramen, right? I mean,
and that's where some parents will opt for an assimilation program where they are, or I'm sorry, not assimilation, an immersion program where they will speak
immersion.
So yeah, we have like Spanish immersion schools here in Texas that are actually in close proximity, and you have to like test into them because like when you go to these schools, they are learning in this case Spanish. So like they're learning US history in Spanish, and they're learning math in Spanish. And it's not uncommon, like when you test into these schools, like parents are made aware that like if you were to pull the kids out and then transfer them to like a different school, there's a chance that they're going to be behind in math and stuff, because they were not only learning like, the complexities of like addition and subtraction and all that, but they're learning it in a second language. So they're not picking it up technically like as fast. So they might be a little bit behind, but they will catch up and then some, right? Because now they can express, different, the way, things work in a whole nother language as well. And so, I mean, that is an option if that's really something that that anyone who's listening to this might want to go down. I mean, those do exist; those are around.
Yeah.
So here's an interesting question, because we had a Finnish foreign exchange student when I was in high school.
Mm-hmm.
What language do you dream in?
Oh,
because
yeah,
she freaked out one night because she woke up. She had switched to dreaming in English.
Yeah.
She had stopped dreaming in Finnish because she was so immersed in the English language.
Oh, wow.
And it was like, and she was freaked out. She's like, I'm going to forget my Finnish. And I'm like, you'll be fine. Like, you're not going to lose it. But so that would be an interesting, like,
dude, it's interesting. Yeah. I think, I know I've known quite a few like Mormon missionaries who would return from these 2-year missions abroad. Like they would serve like these kind of, just like a Christian mission trip, right? They would go 2 years abroad, and some of them would stay stateside, but the ones who would come back would actually dream in the language that they were speaking. And in one case, I had a roommate who woke up, he was sleep talking a little bit, and he was sleep talking in Spanish. And this is a guy that was, from, like middle of nowhere, Utah, just dreaming in Spanish. Which is like, it's a thing. So it's just kind of funny.
It's amazing. It's amazing how your mind works and picks up other languages. Like my wife and I before we had kids, we did a little bit of, we tried to travel as much as we could. And we did a couple of trips around Europe, just to different countries. And in particular, our trips through like Italy and France, especially Italy, because you can hit so many different regions in Italy, that we would go out to dinner, and almost 9 times out of 10, your waitress or waiter would speak multiple languages. So I remember sitting down in a small cafe, ordering dinner. So we walked in, I spoke enough Italian to say, hi, how are you? We'd like a table for 2, blah, blah, blah. And she obviously knew my Italian wasn't very good, so she switched from Italian to English, greeted us, sat us at our table. Well, the kitchen staff was Hispanic. And so she went back and she immediately switched to fluent Spanish, had a conversation with the kitchen staff to put the order in, came back out. There was a table across from us that only spoke French. So she switched to French to take their order, and then went back to Spanish to talk to the kitchen staff, went back to Spanish to talk to the kitchen staff, went back to Italian to talk to some more patrons that had come in, and then had another fluent conversation with us completely in English. And at no point did she ever stumble or sound like she didn't know what she was doing. She just jumped from conversation to conversation. And then the same thing happened when we jumped across the border into Switzerland from northern Italy. And I was sitting in a cafe and I order a coffee in broken Italian. And this man looks at me and he realizes that I don't speak good Italian. And he starts asking me if I would like to speak Dutch, German, French, Spanish, and then finally gets to English.
Yeah.
And he just asked me, he was like, Deutsche? And I was like, nah, no. And he's like, Italiano? I was like, no. And he's like, Francais? And I was like, no. And then he just kept going down the list of languages he could speak. And I was like, this is just a dude at a cafe, like serving coffee. And he speaks like 7 languages. And I've never felt dumber in my life as like just the dumb American that doesn't speak anything but English.
Why didn't you just interrupt him?
I mean,
just be like, English.
You have to put it in some perspective, though, right?
Right.
Like you really have to put it in perspective. You can drive from Italy to Finland in less than a day.
Right.
Yeah.
It would be like if New York, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, and Virginia all had their own languages.
Right.
You would just have to know them to operate within your geographic region.
It's so weird that you can like drive 10 hours across Texas and just be in Texas still.
And
Still
you
in
never
West
left.
Texas.
Right.
Yeah, you've never left
Right.
freaking Texas. You've seen nothing. But you could drive the same amount in Europe and have gone through like 5 different borders, 5
Right.
different languages.
Mhm.
It's so crazy.
Well, and the other piece that I don't think any of us realize, but American dialects are difficult and we don't realize it, right?
Yeah,
The Southern drawl is a lot harder. The Boston hard R is right.
Oh,
we
yeah.
can interpret them
Boston,
because it's all
Paca.
it's part of
Wada.
English or
Yeah.
American English, but it's not. Like if you spend all your time in Boston as a non-native English speaker and then you try and go to the South, you're done for because it's not the same language, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting that we're better at our own dialects,
Mhm.
right? Because I've even heard that doesn't stand for Mandarin. There are so many different dialects of Mandarin. They don't all,
Mhm.
what do you call it? You can't use them all the same, if that makes sense. Or is it
Oh.
Cantonese or what's the?
Well, Cantonese and Mandarin are like the 2 major ones.
Mhm.
Yeah, so. But yeah,
But,
there's different
yeah.
dialects. So, fun fact: my wife, she actually studied Mandarin, and so
Oh, really?
it's actually fun going to Chinese restaurants, and I'm like, hey babe, what are they saying? What are they saying? They say
Wow.
anything
So
bad to
you're
us? Yeah,
wow,
yeah.
that's
Yeah.
actually cool that your wife's able to do
Yeah, it's
that.
really cool.
That's
And she has a
legit, man.
And she has a Taiwanese accent in Mandarin.
Does she?
Oh, yeah.
Because her tutor was Taiwanese.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
so
That's what I've heard
interesting.
is there's a difference
It's-
between like the Shanghai accent and like the Taiwanese accent and like just different regions of the same. It's I mean like the U.S. right? The
Mhm.
different regions speak English differently. We
Mhm.
put sentences together differently, and that's I think that's really interesting too. Like what you said, Andrew, is culturally, I think there is a lot of difference across the U.S. right, depending on where you go. But at the end of the day, I think, the point that you were saying, Andrew, of like the fact that people speak 7 languages is like they have to, because regionally, like you drive across a border and they speak a completely different language. And when we were in Ireland, like I blew these girls' minds because they were like, oh, we're going to go on a road trip we're flying to the US. We're going to fly into New York. We have like a week. We're going to drive across the country. We want to see this and this and this and this and this.
Mhm.
And I was like, so you want to see New York, Vegas, Texas, California, all in a 1-week road trip? And I was like, you can't do that.
Good luck.
I was like, you need like a month to do what you're saying you're going to do.
Yeah.
They're like, well, what do you mean? And I was like, I grew up in Texas, and I told them the same thing. I was like, I can drive for 10 to 12 hours across a single state. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think
Yeah.
you realize how big the
big.
United States actually is.
Right.
Oh, that's
It's
funny.
huge. Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
That was it was fun to be able to kind of open up that discussion on cultures and I
It's
guess
a can of worms we'll have to open again.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Because
It's
for
a
you it's
deep
an interesting
topic.
thing. It's an interesting to navigate because when it comes to the cultural shift for you, it's more of like in a religious sense and kind of navigating that in a predominantly Mormon culture that really does have its own thing. We'll round back to that, but we are pushing over an hour on this episode. So
we need to
let's
finish off.
Yeah, let's quickly hit on our Discord comment, which is actually going to come in directly from Prince Bougie himself on Discord, which is Chris. He asked, "What are some things that turned into toys?" So let's dive into that. Some unintended things that became your kid's favorite toy. Chris, you're the one who posed the question on Discord, so let's kick it off to you.
Yeah.
What was the?
So we subscribe to Lovery. Great service.
Love Every. Yep.
But he just
They're
likes
awesome.
playing with the box. He just wants to
Not
play
the
the box.
stuff inside of the
That's all he
box, the
wants to
actual
do.
box itself.
Nope. He'll take it out. It's like, okay, cool. And he just plays with the box. I was like, okay, great.
Yeah.
Ask me how much? And you just want a box.
Good
Yep.
spend.
Yep. Nice. No, it's funny the things that they find amusing. For me, it was the Apple TV remote at the time. It was always remotes. That's what. So we'd always just take the battery out, give it to them, and that was always the thing. And then we bought him his own remote, and he wanted nothing to do with the decoy remote. He only wanted the real remote. But it was always remotes. That was always the unintended toy. By the way, I had an idea if you guys want to invest, let me know. Let me make this happen. I want to come up with like a line of like dupe popular things like keyboards and remotes and like things that
Door
look
frame.
exactly like the objects that have no electronic components whatsoever, but they press and function
Just a
exactly. Yeah, just a shell. They press and function exactly like Fire Stick remotes, Apple TV remotes, your mouse, your keyboard, your keys, like exact replicas that are literally $1, and then we just sell
all you want to do is shop at the IKEA display model thing, right? They've got all those stupid remotes
TVs,
that aren't remotes and the fake TVs. Yeah, you just want access to that catalog.
That's basically it. I want to build my own version of that and make it hella cheap and be like, yo.
Are you one of those people that buys rubber sushi from the cheap store so that you can display it on the plate properly? Like,
Kroger
I'm gonna take my Instagram photo.
Yo, I do like Kroger sushi, man. I'm just saying, it's delicious. This is a good little...
When I was in Japan, that was one of my favorite shops to go in, was the rubber food store, because they did the windows like it was an actual restaurant, and then you'd walk in and it's just all this fake food and cellophane, and you're like,
all the stuff you can't actually enjoy.
That sushi
amazing.
looked amazing in the window.
Dude, actually, Japan is one of the top 2 places that I really, really want to take my kids in vacation. I've never been to Japan. No, I lied. I have once, but it's very, very, very brief. It was just like a quick stopover on our way to Manila. So I didn't really go to Japan. I was physically there, but I didn't like get to be there. You know what I mean?
Just
so
a tease.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I think that's
it's great.
I really want to visit
love
that. I gotta go. I gotta go to the Pokemon Center there too. That's the real reason, you know. So
there it is.
Can we get like a tally board?
Somebody play the rolling credits. Somebody hit the music.
Can we get like a tally board? Like,
is
there no time to say Pokemon?
Right. All right. What about you guys? What were things that became unintended toys for you guys? Ben and Andrew.
Boxes. Any number of boxes.
Always became a fort.
So we've discovered the joys of giving my son a giant box and a bunch of crayons and just letting him color inside the box.
Oh, there you go.
It provides at least 30 minutes of uninterrupted whatever you need to do.
Okay.
That, and then the latest thing, which is getting kind of dangerous, is like anything in the garage that I'm using that like might seriously injure him. Is like the thing that he wants to play with.
Yours is almost as good as mine.
Lawnmowers, anything in the weight room. So like we have a gym in our garage, so anything in the gym. I walked in on him doing like banded face pulls, and like the band was about to like snap off and hit him in the face. I was like, dude, you cannot play with this without me out here.
Anything but their toys. That's how it is.
So I keep the ball canning jars because I use them as Tupperware is what I do. Yeah. Right. And so like there'll be some full of mustard. Anyway, they're in the bottom drawer they were in our kitchen. And one day I just heard clang, clang, clang. And she was pulling them out, spinning the lids off, and like tossing these little glass jars all over the floor. It was like, oh, yeah, those are toys, aren't they? Mm-hmm. I guess that drawer is changing. But the other one that is almost as bad as Ben's garage one is I changed the spring, the firing spring in one of my rifles, and I had the spring in the butt. I just like set it out because it wasn't like it was the one I was changing out. It was the old one. It was just setting there, and she grabs it and she's just whipping it around. I'm like, okay, maybe working on the firearm in the same room as the toddler is not like
that's fine.
It's not unsafe. But she's just like, let me grab this spring covered in gun oil and just whip it around the place. Like, okay, man, dad fail number 2.
That's how you end the dad podcast she's right there. Don't
right there.
Guns in front of your.
Oops. To be fair, it was completely disassembled. It was not a danger to her. It was just one of those things where it was like my hands were all greasy, and then she just grabbed it, and I get it. It's fun. Like, it's a fun little spring to play with. I know why she liked it, but it also just made me go, oh man, this is one of those you don't want on Instagram. Yep. Okay. Got it. And now it's going to be on YouTube, and I admitted to it. So cancel me for that one too.
It's all good.
I volunteer as tribute.
We're all canceled today, apparently. Guys, we have run a little long, but we appreciate you guys listening this long. If you are still already here, as usual, you can send us a review for us to read, and we've got one right here from 2005 G35 sedan. That's the user's name.
No
90s
way.
Kid, I Can
No
Relate
way.
is the name of the review. Loving the show, 90s Kid here. Looking forward to the content, being a new parent, navigating my way through the upcoming challenges. Thank you, 2005 G35 sedan, for that review. If you want to leave us a review or comments, whether that's through Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube comment, let us know how you like the podcast. And feel free to suggest any sort of topics that you want us to go off of. We plan on having more guests just like Chris for future episodes. Chris, thank you for hopping on and spending the last hour with us, chatting about your experiences and your life as a dad. If you want, you can join anyone out there. You can join our Discord, where Chris can be found as Prince Bougie. I'm Dad Verb. You got the other Andrew Saunders, and then you've got Ben Brown, which I think your name is Mr. McKenzie
Still under Mr. McKenzie.
Mr.
Yes,
McKenzie
sir.
right there on Discord. So
You can find me on all the things.
there you go. That's where we're at. Thank you all for listening, and we will catch you on the next episode. Take care, guys. Peace.